Welcome to Season 2 of the Indomitable Podcast. I'm your host, Di Cerullo, and today we have another episode that will leave you inspired. My guest today is the indomitable Gregory Halpin. Gregory has 30 plus years of experience as a creative practice coach, solo theater artist, stage and TV actor, and he is a great singer. Gregory teaches creatives how to cultivate a creative practice for staying on their creative journey. And Gregory is the host of Creative Juices Podcast. Wow, that is so much awesome stuff. Hello, Gregory. I am so happy to have you here today.
Hi, Di. Thank you so much for having me on and reading all that really cool stuff. That was sweet. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you. Okay, so why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself for anybody who hasn't met you yet?
Yes, so I'm Gregory. I am a creative practice coach, and we can go into that more later. I'm a active singer, actor, solo theater artist, currently creating a one-person play. And yeah, so that's me, living in New York City, living the artist life and being a coach too, and, making it all happen.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about the artist life. I mean, I write, but that's pretty outside of my wheelhouse, like performing.
Yeah, so I have a background in musical theater. Since 11th grade is when I started professionally, and just, over the years though, when you have anxiety, it just kind of like kept getting in the way. So it was actually over the last 5 years when I started to blossom and started to work on all of that. So it's sort of like reliving what I started when I first moved to the city in 1991.
Wow, in the 90s in New York. Wow.
Yeah. Fabulous time.
Right? What was that like?
Oh my God. The nightlife scene, the drag scene, the club scene was just beautiful and very much alive. Just not like it is today. It's not very like it is today. Boring and bad.
It's very boring and bad. Oh, so you're a creative process coach. Tell me a little bit about that. Who comes to you?
So I work with creatives who are stuck in their head too much, and they've been in this cycle of not being creative for years. Like sometimes the cycle can go on and on and on, but they don't realize is they don't have this really personal, intimate process that they go to where they can just go and do something and then become inspired and motivated because they have this journey that they can turn to that's just fine-tuned for them.
What kind of barriers would they be coming up against?
They would be coming up against all of these ideas like inner critic and self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, just all these messages that they've received over their life. But they start to believe it and they think like, oh, I don't have enough money, or I don't know enough people to excel in my field of creativity. But what it is, it's really inside. And and it boils down to, let's say I'm learning a new song, right? And I'm learning a new song for a little concert that I'm doing in May in New York City. And so I don't just start singing the songs. It's like very baby step process. Like I look at the song and then I start to breathe the song, live the song, sing it very softly for a while. And then I start to build upon that and just step by step get it into my body, into my voice, so I can be underneath the song rather than let the song swallow me up, especially if it's a big, hard song.
Right. You are saying that you eventually bring yourself into the work that you're doing. So it sounds like you have to have a pretty real awareness of who you are as a person. How do you think about living creatively and authentically?
Well, for me, it's understanding that the whole creative practice thing is understanding that it's a process to get from point A to point B, that you have to go through these steps, these personal steps to get to that sort of finished product, and not really focus on the finished product. Just let that go because you have no control over it. It's just you can control what's happening on the way, on the journey. And so for me, that looks like working with a coach or working with a voice teacher or a vocal coach to help me build that song into my voice. It's also about journaling about it, and journaling what inspires me so I can get everything out of my head, like that inner critic who's like, oh my God, you cracked on that note and you suck and whatever. And because that can really wreak havoc in your brain. You're like, you think you're not good, but like, wait a minute, I have a pretty good voice. So just chill.
Yeah. Right. Oh
Yeah.
my God. My inner critic is also the worst. For example, I started handing out copies of my book to people that I wanted to read it and get back to me with their opinions and their thoughts. And like I said to them, each of them, I was like, look, I'd rather be punched in the face by a friend than fall on my face in public, right? And a lot of people came through, but then I had some people that just like never talked to me again. And I mean, it isn't like a lot of time has passed. It's
Wow.
like, I started doing it last year. So like people have lives, but what is my inner critic saying? My inner critic is saying they hated your book. They don't want to tell you. They, didn't know this about you and they hate you for it. They're never going to talk to you again. You totally lost a friend, right?
Yes.
Is that something you're going through as well? Because it feels like
Yes.
creating for the public, creating for public consumption on any level has to be probably the hardest thing you're doing on any given day. Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. And that's why a creative practice is so important, because when you build that practice, that is your comfort, that is your protection. That is where you start to feel safe within
Yes.
whatever material you're working on. So you're
Mhm.
not just going in front of, like, some people are skilled enough where they can just get up and sing and do that, but they've been doing this for a long time, so they've already built that. So for
Right.
those who haven't and don't know why they're stuck,
Mhm.
that's a great place to start, because you just want to feel safe in
Yeah.
front of an audience, even if that critic comes in here in your head thinking, oh my God, they're going to hate you, they're going to think you suck. Then you can bounce back from that quicker, because you're building this like really strong resilience through that
Right.
practice. Yeah.
Right. And then a lot of us who are creatives have trauma backgrounds, right? So we are kind of overcoming things
Yes.
while we are running ourselves through that really difficult process of creating for the public, right?
Yeah.
Are a lot of times the people that you are working with sort of overcoming both of those things, like a trauma background and also, trying to create for the public? How does that go?
Yeah. Navigating trauma, triggers,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, depression. And
Yeah.
so I try to teach them how to integrate that into their creative work, as opposed to figuring out a way outside of themselves to fix it or
Of course.
shove it down. You get it. You get it.
Definitely. First, you try to deny it, and then you try to ignore it.
Yes.
And then you get to the place where you are comfortable using it, but not until you are able to live in the feelings without either pushing them away or drowning them out with like alcohol or any other practice that we might be engaging in, right? It can be really difficult to get to that place. And honestly, I'm not always there. I wrote a foster care book and I'm still not always there. Creating is like being naked in public. I don't know why we do it. Why do we do this?
I don't know. It's something about, it seems like we just like that. We like to be re-traumatized, I guess. I don't know. We're addicted to
We're addicted to the drama.
Yes.
We're addicted to the drama. I have never met anybody who does coaching that hasn't had things to overcome themselves, right? Anytime I meet a coach, there's somebody who is reaching back down the line for the people that are coming after them. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing, how you got to this place.
So I come from not anything too different from someone who grew up in a household of alcoholics and violence, and just, in the 70s, having four other siblings. It was about growing up in that chaotic energy that just fueled. Even as a little boy, I had panic attacks, and even grade school, my stomach was constantly in knots. And so I experienced that, perpetuated that, and repeated that for years and years and years, until that trauma, that sensation, that terror, all of that just, fit into my body. The body keeps the score, right?
Right. That's right.
And
that's
so,
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why I believe, like, when I reached my 20s and I moved to New York City, I carried all that with me. And I didn't obviously know how to navigate that or even reach out for help. So as I was pursuing a career in theater, musical theater, I carried that into every situation. So every time I would learn a new song, that anxiety would be there. And I didn't know that that was the start of a bad creative habit. So I had to reverse all of that. I had to interrupt that sensation.
Right. How?
No,
How?
that's like, how?
Tell me.
Like 20 years of fucking up. Oh, can we
No,
swear?
please.
Can we swear?
No, yes, please.
20 years.
I live north of Boston. We're fine with that. Go
Oh,
for it.
good. Good.
You go ahead. You say
I'm
what you need
relieved.
to say.
Like, so I noticed over the past few months when I'm learning a new song and I start to sing, I get this. So typically I get this very self-conscious feeling, and I feel like, oh my God, I got to watch the door. Is someone listening? So
Yes.
when that happens now, I just stop and I just sit with the discomfort, and I'm just kind of reassure myself that no, it's okay. If somebody is listening, that's fine. And it took a long time to kind of to break through that. It's still hard sometimes, and it
Yeah.
takes me a long time to finally get into the song. Anybody who's a performer gets very nervous, and there are seasoned professional famous people who throw up before they go on. So, and I thought, oh wow, I thought they
Yeah.
were perfect and they didn't have that.
Right.
So
Right. I believe that. Like, I do public speaking, and I regularly, you could find me outside the room jumping up and down trying not to throw up. I've been doing it for years, and it doesn't get any easier, no matter how big the audience, small the audience is, doesn't matter. Feels exactly the same every single time. Is that your experience as well?
It's still very big. It's still very, but I wish I'd known like that's normal. That's like a normal. And when you have trauma, that it's 10 times that, but I didn't know that
was what was feeding it. Yeah. And then we tend to attract relationships.
Yes.
I don't want to say attract relationships. We're comfortable in toxic relationships because we come from toxic family backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
How have your relationships, I'm imagining New York in the 90s, how have your relationships been impacted by your background?
Oh God, the 90s. I was in my 20s.
I know, like 20s. I'm imagining it in my mind, but I know not everybody's part of the queer community the way we are. So I'm like, I'm kind of like, you know what? Go ahead and paint that picture for us if you wouldn't mind.
Well, there was a lot of fun. There was a lot of clubbing and dressing up very outrageously to go to the clubs. And that was so much fun. But there was also, partying too much and waking up, wonder, oh my God, I'm in a strange man's apartment. But today, like, I'm dating somebody new, and this is like one of the first healthiest starts of a relationship that I've had. It's beautiful, just wonderful all around. And we just, we talk about it all the time about having tools and having support systems. So it's like, oh my God, where was
oh my God, no, therapy
right.
Therapy became more of a thing that people did. Suddenly you can have those conversations in relationships, but even when I was a kid, it was it was not that way. I was a kid in the 90s, but definitely when I started coming of age in the early 2000s, that still wasn't the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People were kind of toxic and they knew it.
Shit comes up all the time still, and you get sidetracked by an emotion or an intense feeling, a trigger. That shit's there. But it's just different when you have the tools to kind of, navigate that. You want to throw up, and that throw up feeling is still there.
Do you feel like you struggle to hold boundaries and sort of establish what your feelings are? Are you still in that place where talking about your feelings very much feels like you are either judging one way or the other, or are y'all much better at communication given your experience?
I mean, the intensity is there, and the trigger to react or project. Yeah.
Yes.
But what's different is it's like I feel this warmth, it's this beautiful intimacy that I'm experiencing with this person, where it's freaking scary and like terrifying. And that's the process, like a creative process. This dating is a process. In my 20s, I would, meet somebody and tomorrow we'll move in together and be in a relationship. But with today, it's like, it's different. It's like very baby steps. And just that part is, it's so different. It's so different.
Yeah, it's incredible to me how hardcore we used to be. Like, you'd meet someone and then you'd be dating, and the relationships were so intense, but then they were so toxic as well, right? They were so bad for you. And then when you get to a place where you know more about yourself, those relationships go slower and they take longer and the conversations are different, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. I'm happy for you. I am
Oh,
proud
thank
of you
you.
for
Thank
addressing
you.
those things in your life and in your history. I mean, that is not easy to do. A lot of people kind of roll through their lives having never thought about it before and just kind of can be the cause of their own destruction regularly and never see it that way. So I'm
Yes.
really proud of you for taking that time to heal and create better structure in your life. I think that's
Yeah.
great.
Gee,
Congratulations.
thanks. That's
You're
sweet.
welcome.
Thanks. That's sweet.
You're welcome. God, you get over 30 different priorities. Like I've got my adjustable bed, like I'm in my Golden Girls
Adjustable.
era. Oh my God. Always live the way old ladies are living. If you haven't heard me say that yet, old ladies are doing it right. Do whatever the old ladies are doing if you want to be happy. Yep.
Okay. I want to be an old lady. I'm going to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am right about that. B. Arthur was right about everything. Okay. So now I want to ask you about your show. What are you
Yeah.
working on?
So I'm working on an autobiographical piece. And there's a lot of artistic licensure in it. Everything's pulled from my past, but it's a story of resilience. It opens with my inner child, Big Red, what I was called when I was a little boy. And it's really a story of understanding what happens when a family carries the burden of a traumatic experience that wasn't really ours to begin with. My parents lost a daughter before I was born. She was 6 months old, and they went out one night to celebrate a coworker's wedding, and they came back to their daughter dead on the couch, just like, please. So that just launched a whole lifetime of that, alcoholism. They blamed each other and they took it. And that's why there was like 6 years between my older siblings and then myself. And I didn't realize that until I started writing this show. I'm like, oh my God, that's why all this crap that happened. So essentially, that's the show, dramatic. So it goes through a timeline touching on various coming of age experiences, like my first kiss with a boy named Joe in 8th grade, which was very sweet and very, very packed. And I'm going to unpack that in the show.
I understand.
Yes.
You're like, yep.
It's very, like every time he made peanut butter milkshakes when I stayed over his house. And so to this day, when I smell peanut butter, I'm like, it reminds me of that. And then the song that was playing, and it was just sweet. So I want to normalize that a first kiss is a first kiss, no matter who you are.
No matter who you are, yeah.
Whether it's 2 boys, 2 girls, girl and a boy, whatever.
Yeah, yes. That's human experience. I like that.
Yeah.
Normalizing a human experience through a different lens is always really important for the community to see.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm proud of you. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Good. As someone who has children, thank God.
You're so affirming. I love it.
Oh, well, you know what?
It.
That's the other thing. You become an elder in the queer community and you sort of become a mom to everyone. Yeah. And I feel that way because I didn't have parents. So once I kind of became a mom, that was my whole thing. Like anybody under the age of 40 and over the age of 40, I've noticed is my child. I am here to support you. I'm proud of you,
You're the nurturer. You're the nurturer archetype.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Very much. I know how important it is. And sometimes I feel like, what if I'm the only person that person runs into? What if I'm the only one? What if it's on purpose that person has run into me? It's my path to say something. It's my path to do something,
Mm-hmm,
so, if everything matters, then I'm going to make it this way.
Beautiful.
So when did you sort of, just talking about normalizing those experiences of having a first kiss, regardless of who you are, when do you think that you knew that you were gay? I mean, it was the 70s, right? 70s and the 80s. So it's not like that. It's not like it is today. When would you say that you started realizing maybe you were a little different?
I probably maybe 5 or 6 years old. And that's kind of when the internal homophobia started, just from a reaction from my parents, because I was very different. I didn't want to go outside all the time and play. And, I wanted to draw and play with my sister's Barbie vanity set, because you could put makeup on her eyes and lipstick.
Yes. Agree?
Yeah, right? Hello.
Yes.
Well, my dad would just force me to go outside and, like, you're not going to be a sissy. You're my son. You're going to get outside and play with your Tonka trucks. It was all about the Tonka trucks in the 70s. So I didn't consciously know. I didn't have a name for it, but I think it wasn't until I was like 10 or 11, maybe, when I would have a male teacher in grade school, like fifth or sixth grade. Something very attractive about that person was in my consciousness. Now, it didn't come out until I was 19, though. 20.
20.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. So I didn't come out. Like, I grew up outside the system, so nobody was really raising me. So I thought everybody was attracted to everybody. I was like, oh yeah, women are pretty, boys are pretty, everybody's pretty, right? And then I got to be in high school and people would be like, oh no, boys. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, but like, not all boys, right? Like girls, right? And they'd be like, no, not girls, so it was I had sort of a reverse experience, but then sort of samesies, as you get older, where you're just like, oh, so I was out in high school. I was just like, yep. Like, I had a t-shirt that said, I kiss girls on it. And that was not on purpose. Well, it wasn't on purpose in the way that way. It was more on purpose because a lot of my queer friends who couldn't hide who they were, especially sort of femme presenting gay men, just were getting bullied like crazy. I wanted to be like, go ahead. What else can you do to me? What else can you say? What else can I lose? So that has been sort of my identity for the last, more than 20 years. I don't want to say how many, but like more than 20 years, because like there was nothing else they could do. You know what I mean? They was so othered by the process of being a foster kid that at that point I had nothing to lose. So that was one of the ways that I sort of made community in that age as we were sort of coming of age. So that's been part of my life for a really long time, because I was so frustrated with the experience of everybody having felt alone, by being queer. And it's so many of us. So anyway, this is not about me. This is about you. Just having a fun conversation here.
It's about us. It's about us. It's about us.
It's about all of us.
Yeah.
When you were growing up in New York, what would you say the temperature was around the gay community?
After I left home, graduated high school, and moved to New York City, it was strong, but I didn't really know how to access it. I gravitated mostly towards women, either gay women or straight women. I was just always, I don't know, felt safe with them. It was there. It was very, very vibrant. I mean, I did seek it through clubbing. That was a very, club culture.
That's a different, I mean, club culture, setting that aside for a moment, which is enormous. I think that a lot of times when we are seeking out those more intimate friendships where we are seen as ourselves and not just as who we are at clubs, let's go with. When we're being seen as ourselves, those can be more intimate relationships, and those are actually harder to cultivate, right?
Yeah, I didn't do it very well. I was sort of like the little gay jester. I was the very funny 20-year-old. I made everybody laugh, and I was just, I was that, but I didn't know how to go beyond that. So when I tried to be more intimate as I got older with friendships, I made everything about me. I was very self-centered. And that's how that manifested.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of joy and a lot of value in those younger friendships as well.
Would you say that you dated sort of older men at that time? Anybody?
Anything that the wind would throw my way.
Right, okay. When you said you sort of realized who you were when you had sort of male teachers, it made me wonder. That can be the way because of overbearing fathers. So it made me wonder if you sort of also sought out older men in relationships because of like having an overbearing father. Because I follow exactly my paths of trauma. So I wondered if that's true for everybody.
Yeah, no, I did see that pattern in the men that I would date. It's very abusive and toxic, and the behavior is toxic, and I would also contribute to that toxicity. So definitely.
Because that was your relationship in your family as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you the youngest in your family?
I have a younger brother, and that's me, and then 3 older siblings,
So
including.
you're younger.
Yeah, I'm younger. Yes. I don't know. Like every time over the years, people would ask me that, and I would go through that. I would go through that.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I would recite that. I'm like, oh my
Yes,
God, like,
yes,
duh.
yes. Yeah, sort of your place in the family is part of who you are in that familial identity for a really long time. And we tend to carry those forward. That's really fascinating. So
Yeah.
you're a performer, you're one of the youngest.
Mhm.
You know, that's true of a lot of us, I would say. A lot of us turn into comedians like I did
Yes.
when you are trying to diffuse tense situations. You know, you sort of turn into a talker. You turn into a mediator for your family, and I see that is true for you as well.
The guy that I'm dating right now, there's this pattern slipping in with sarcasm. We both do it, but for speaking for myself, I tend to insist when something very triggering or sensitive or emotional happens, I turn to sarcasm immediately and joke. So it's just interesting how that shows up, you know?
Of course.
Because you were talking about we do these things to self-protect.
Yes,
yeah.
We do. Yeah. And we become our patterns, right? And like our patterns are part of our trauma. And it's just, I mean, when you go on that journey to self-discovery, it's a doozy. It's like getting punched in the face pretty regularly, right? Yeah.
Yes, the face, the neck, everything.
Or what have you.
Yes.
That has been my experience as well. Sometimes, and I mean, having kids is different in that way too, because I'm raising tiny versions of me that are part of sort of my, you know, my habits. And you'll look and you'll be like, oh shit, that's because of me. That's mine. It can be really hard looking at yourself like right there. But you really can't be a creative unless you're willing to do that, right? Like, because just all of that well of creativity comes very much from your story. And that I see that you like to coach people to lead from their story. Why do you do it that way?
I just turned 54, and I'm like, when you reach that age, that's when a lot of things start to melt away, a lot of not caring anymore and stuff like that. But like, it just took me forever to like get to this place of feeling like a freaking artist. And so I feel like I have to, like, I can't keep it. I can't keep all of that. I need to give it away. And that's how I envision it. You can't keep that. You do the things that you do. You write and speak because you have been through it, and you can't contain it all to yourself.
Of course. And then the ADHD, I'll just say what I'm thinking, right? So I don't have a great filter. So, and I don't have a great poker face. It's just on my face all the time. My eyebrows are in business for themselves. I know, me too. So I have to, because like, if I don't write, or I'm not speaking, or I'm not doing these things, it's all me. I'm always doing this. I'm always talking to myself. So I have to share with y'all, because if I don't, then it's just in me all the time. And and I will tell you this because I'm sure you would understand. The creative process is very much the same as growing a human. You have the human in your body, you are growing it, and you think that that's the hard part, right? But when you finally release it out into the world and you can't protect it or hide it anymore, that's when the hard part really starts. That's when the hard part, when other people can see what you're doing, when other people can comment on what you're doing, that's when you sort of have the harder part of the act of creation happening for you. And I think that is true whether you write a book, or you have a child, or you create your own one-person show. It always feels easier to get that out than it does to have it just locked within you. So,
and I'm not going to lie either, because it does help me as well. You know, it does help. It's healing, and it helps me dive deeper into myself and work through shit and and
that's the goal, right? Like, that's the goal, becoming more of who you are every single day. I feel like sometimes when you are on that path, you're sort of at individual level, and then the bigger you get and the better you get at it, then your teacher, then your coach, then your whatever. And I think that's where a lot of us are right now, from our 40s to our hundreds, just kind of, oh, don't worry about that. that's not a real thing. You know what I mean? Like I spend a lot of my time sort of casually mentoring people where I'm just like, oh, that one's fake. We're not going to worry about that. That's a fake thing, you know? So I love that you're out here doing this, especially coaching the rest of us in how to do the amazing things that you can do. So what would you say is next for you? I mean, you've got this one person show coming up. Talk to me a little bit about your coaching. Who are you looking to work with?
I'm looking to work with creatives who have once had a foothold in their work and they were doing very well, but then something happened and got sidetracked or derailed or raised a family or whatever, something happened.
Yeah, whatever it is.
And that they're ready to just like get in there and figure it out, you know, with somebody to help, because we grow and we learn in relationship. We learn together. We don't learn alone.
That's right.
And so like that's the kind of person I want to work with, you know, somebody who's just ready.
Yeah.
Scared, nervous, afraid, but ready.
So what is the story someone would be telling themselves when it's time to call you? What's something that they're talking to themselves about? What is their inner dialogue when it's time to call Gregory?
It's like, wow, I have this really great idea, whatever, you know, insert whatever their creative magic is, whatever they do. Like, oh my God, I have this really great idea. I started planning it out. Then all of a sudden fear crept in, the voices. I heard my mother in the background of my head saying, no, you can't do that. That's not suitable for you because it's just not going to help you raise money. It's not going to support all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But they know deep down inside, like me, like throughout the years, no matter what I went through, there's always been that voice that said, don't you give up. Don't you even try it. And that's something that they have, and they know that there's something bigger, that their work is going to make an impact.
Yes.
But they don't know. Yes. They don't know it yet. They know it sort of, but they don't know how big.
Yeah, that can definitely happen. Where you're just like, all right, I'm not going to do it. I've got other things. Nope, I'll do other things. I can make money this way or that way. I mean, I gave up writing that book probably 100 times. Like I knew many times in my life that I was going to have to write that book. And I pushed it away as many times as I was able to. And then I kind of got to a point in my life where I realized I was running into walls in every other place, right? So I was working in tech. I was making enough money and I was just so unhappy with where I was right then. And I kept running into these walls and experiencing burnout. And finally, when it kind of became one of the only options that was feasible, then I was like, okay, Di, you got to write this book, because if you don't, you're not going to climb any higher. You're not going to go any farther in your life until you deal with this first.
Yes.
And that is very much part of every creative everywhere. They run into that wall, and then it's time to deal with that thing that is your life's goal, you know?
And what happened when you finished the book and it got published? Like, didn't that break open like the Watergate?
Oh my God, of course it did. So it was wild. And so you write it or you create, right? You create something and you think you know why you were doing it. So I wrote the book for me, right? Like I wrote it for me. I wrote it as if I'm talking to a friend. I'm telling this story to a friend. It's entirely in my voice. And then when I got it into the hands of other people, suddenly everybody started telling me how much they related to the story, which was wild because, of course, I grew up in foster care. I grew up in such a specific way that it always felt so shameful to me that like I wasn't picked, that I wasn't chosen, that I wasn't loved in the same way that other kids were, right? And yet we were living those experiences side by side. So I mean, I had people come back to me and say, Di, it was like you were living in my house with me. And I was like, how can that be? Wow. So it entirely changed how I thought about my experience. And instead, it made me feel like this was kind of a shared experience between a lot of us, right? So that changed how I thought about the experience entirely. It wasn't about me. It was about them. It was about abusers. It was about people who felt bad and needed me to feel bad too. And that really changed my path a lot. So I wrote it for me, but I guess I wrote it for everybody. But if I knew that I was writing it for everybody, I would have written it in a different way. So I couldn't know that it was about everybody until the book came out, which was wild to me. Oh yeah. So yes, to answer your question, it does change everything when you finally do the thing.
God, I can imagine if you did realize that you were writing it for everyone, how much pressure that would have felt.
Of course.
It would have been like, oh my God, I'm going to procrastinate. I'm going to do all these things.
Should I say this? Should I talk about this one thing? Should I talk about it in a way that's more accessible? Like, should I talk about it in a way that more people are going to get it? No, right?
Yeah.
I talked about it exactly as I experienced it, and I released it. And I was just like, well, this is it, guys. I'm totally naked in public. Hope you dig it. You know,
yes,
then everybody was like, this is exactly what happened. And it blew me away.
Yes.
It made me wonder if people who are reading it and having that experience told anybody else besides me that they were having that same relatable experience, or if they all are just out there thinking it's just me and them, you know?
Yes. Brilliant.
Right?
And that's like the creative practice. It's like,
right.
It helps that person, that artist, to realize like, well, maybe I've been creating this mediocre stuff because I'm creating stuff that I think everybody wants me to create, instead of instead of how you wrote your book, you wrote it from exactly what happened from your voice. And that's when you realize like, oh, okay, wow, this is real.
No, it's everybody. Yes, exactly.
It's everybody.
I went through my life feeling like an alien. I went through my life feeling like I must be so, so different, and nobody else would understand what it was like to be me. And thus I was going to document, you know, my journey on this earth through this book that nobody would like and everybody would hate.
Yeah.
Exactly the opposite happened.
Brilliant.
Like, right? I know. And if you had told me that ahead of time, I would have procrastinated more. I would have written it for the lowest common denominator, and it would have been trash. So, I mean, the creative process is so difficult to explain, which is why I was so excited to have you, because I was just like, oh my God, it's so specific.
You get it. You have it.
And yes, exactly. It's already within you. Stop seeking it out there. Stop asking people for their permission. Stop telling people, you know, oh, well, what do you think? Should I do this or no? You already have it. You already have it. Just get somebody like Gregory here to enable you to seek it in an authentic way.
Yeah.
I love that.
Give yourself permission. Exactly.
Give yourself permission. Exactly.
Yep.
So, all right. So you are doing coaching. Who are you looking for your next clients?
My wheelhouse and my favorite is to help performers, to help solo show artists. I feel like that's just something, and it's not about helping them develop a show or write something, because I've seen many solo theater artists who really want to do it, but they're just constantly complaining about being stuck in this rut. And I want to be the person to help unstick them from that rut so they can get their story out there and tell their story through their voice. I'm so passionate about that. Helping performers, because it's just what I know, what I do, and, you know, I feel like it would work.
Honestly, is there anything more awesome than being able to enable people to use their voice and leave their mark on this world? Like, honestly, the thing that you are doing is so cool. And I love creative coaching. I love that as a thing that is happening for people in the world, because so many of us are just like, oh, I'm not creative. I say that all the time. I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm not creative. And like, that is the story I'm telling myself. You're over in New York City just being successful for the last 20, however many years. And I'm just like, honestly, if you can do it in New York, you can be successful anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So
I want to help them redefine the idea of what it means to make it and be successful, because just because you're not on Broadway or have a record or have a book, or your creativity and the way you want to make a mark in the world is going to be different than you ever imagined it. That's what I discovered, and it's true and it's real. You have to redefine what that looks like.
Yeah.
It's not
what
you
feel
think
about that? Like, Elizabeth Gilbert in her book, Big Magic, talks about how unfair it is to have your creativity be responsible for, making enough money to sustain your lifestyle. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about making money be the level by which you measure your creative success?
That's a tough one, because it's so wrapped up,
of course,
in all of it. And I think
Yep.
it needs to be untangled for sure.
Mm.
Money
Mm.
does help. Money gives you
Yes.
access and power
Yes.
and whatever,
Yes.
um, but it's not
Yeah.
the end. It's not the end of it. I was interviewing an actress on my podcast who has been in many TV shows, supporting roles, and she's in movies. And she came up. She discovered this too, that she was tired of creating a project, having to market it, and having the endpoint make money from it.
Mm.
So that that concoction, it was very toxic for her. So as soon as she realized that, she just let go of all of that and just created. And to also understand that when you create something, it may not show the light of day ever.
Yes.
It
Yes.
may be just something that you needed to do. And she also, that's her too. So I don't want to take
Mhm.
credit for that.
Right. Right. Wow. So tell me a little bit about your podcast before I let you go. Who are you talking to on your podcast and what are you talking about? Why did you get it started?
So Creative Juices is a podcast for creatives, just to
Mm-hmm.
kind of give them an insight and a bird's eye view of myself and my creative friends and what we do to
Mm-hmm.
keep on the creative path after life
Yes.
kicks us off of it. Because
Often.
it's gonna happen often,
Often.
it's gonna kick your booty and you're gonna be like, okay, what do I do now? My friends and I just want to, show them that it's possible to build up some resilience and
Yes.
kind of bounce back a little faster next time.
Yes. Because if you don't know this yet, as a creative, you will spend many days of your life laying on the ground. It just is what it is, and
Yes.
feeling like a failure. It just
Yes.
is what it is.
Yes.
It's part of the process, right?
Yes.
I would love this conversation to go on forever. I
Oh my
always say that,
God.
but you are just, I mean, I could talk to you forever. How do you want people to reach out to you and how can people follow you?
Like, find me I'm on Instagram a lot. So Gregory Halpin on
Mhm.
Instagram, and my website, gregoryhalpin.com.
Excellent. And folks, as you know from watching the show before, I'm going to have all of Gregory's links in my show notes, so you'll be able to follow him and support him throughout his process, especially if you are the creative any part of the creative process where you are looking for some support. Gregory is here for you. Thank you so much for being here. It is such a pleasure to talk to you. I love what you're doing, and I think it's such a necessary part of who we are becoming as humans, because creativity is such a big part of our humanness, right?
Yes. And thank you, Di, for creating such a safe space, because
Ah,
it feels
anytime.
very safe here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so delighted to hear that. Especially child me would be delighted to hear that. I grew up to make space for people like me.
Yes.
That's just, it's my favorite. So y'all, thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the Indomitable Podcast for more incredible stories of humaning. Remember, my new book, Indomitable, A Foster Care Story, is available wherever you get your books. This is it right here. Thank you so much to all of my Indomitable friends who reached out to me after I shared my story for the season 1 finale. It was so rewarding to see people being impacted by it and sharing their journeys with me, and hopefully, as we said, with each other. So if you have any upcoming events you'd like me to bring the Indomitable experience to, please submit a request via my website at dicerulo.com. And finally, as ever, I am so happy to be here in community with you. And remember, together we are truly indomitable. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.